Epilogue. 6 months later. "You look absolutely stunning," Melody said, as Kaitlyn stepped in front of the mirror. Kaitlyn spun and examined the dress from all angles. "You don't think it's too much?" Though she was not generally a lace and frills person, she had always imagined getting married in a white dress with a full skirt. Though she had worn a wedding dress when she married Jerry, he had picked it out for her, a simple sheath that had no extras. This dress made her feel like Cinderella, the way it billowed out around her feet. The neckline was a sweetheart, dipping low enough to show off her neckline, but not too low. And though the sleeves were long, they were made entirely of lace. "No, I think it fits you perfectly, and Dillon will too." Kaitlyn smiled at the thought of seeing Dillon in his tux. Though she had helped pick it out, she hadn't seen the full look, just the jacket. They had chosen colors together, and she had seen the tie and vest he picked, but he had refused to let her see the whole outfit. "If I can't see the bride, then you can't see the groom," he'd said. "Is everything else ready? The food? Jack? The minister?" Melody smiled. "Well, I don't know, as I've been in here with you, but I think so. Shall I go check?" Kaitlyn was just about to answer yes when a knock sounded at the door. Melanie opened the door a crack to see who it was, then threw it wide to allow Margie to enter. "Well, aren't you a sight?" Margie said. Kaitlyn's heart filled with emotion for her about-to-be mother-in-law. Margie had long held a place in her heart, but the last 7 months had been amazing. She and Kaitlyn had had long chats while Dillon took Jack through the forest at the lodge. Then Margie and Dan had watched Jack so Kaitlyn and Dillon could have date time. It was almost as good as having her own mother back. "Thanks, Margie." Kaitlyn smoothed the skirt of her dress. Her insides were wound up tight, and she didn't know what to do with her hands. "I thought you might like to know that the caterer arrived and the food looks amazing. Jack is dressed and holding the ring pillow like a pro. The preacher and the photographer are both here and ready, and your father looks very dapper and emotional." Kaitlyn smiled and wiped the wetness from the corner of her eyes. How Margie could have known those were all her questions were beyond her. But she was so thankful for the wonderful woman. "And Dillon?" Margie smiled. "Dillon is there waiting, but that's all I'm saying. Now, are you ready?" Kaitlyn took one final look in the mirror. Her dark hair was pulled up in a simple updo, with a few tendrils curling by her face. Her veil was attached with a comb to the updo and flowed down her back, a stream of white. Her dress appeared to be fitting correctly, skimming her slim figure from shoulder to waist. But something was missing. Her eyes widened. "Flowers! Did we forget my bouquet?" "Relax." Melanie appeared behind her and handed her the bouquet of roses and carnations. "We had them sitting over there so we could fix your makeup, remember?" "Right." Kaitlyn didn't actually remember, but everything in the last 2 hours felt like a blur anyway. She took one final breath, her shoulders raising with the motion and slowly sinking down. "Then I suppose I'm ready." Margie leaned in to hug her. "You are so beautiful, and I know your mother would be proud." Kaitlyn could feel the wetness returning to her eyes. She needed to get her emotions under control, or she'd spend the whole ceremony dabbing her eyes. "Okay, let's go." Melody led the way out of the guest room, no longer a bright yellow, but now a classic cream color, and down the stairs of the lodge. True to Margie's word, Kaitlyn's father stood at the entrance to the back door tugging at his tie. Jack stood to his side, staring down at the pillow as if he were afraid he was going to drop it. Grant, Dillon's friend, stood closest to the closed doors. When he saw the girls approaching, his eyes lit up, and a smile fluttered across his face. He and Melody had seemed to hit it off during the rehearsal dinner, and Kaitlyn wondered if there might be romance in Melody's future. Next to Grant was Dan, who had graciously agreed to serve as an usher as long as he could walk Margie down the aisle.
"Kaitlyn, you look like an angel."
The voice came from her father's mouth, but she almost didn't recognize it, as it was strangled with emotion. Jack looked up from his pillow at the words, and a toothy grin covered his face.
"Wow, Mom, you sure clean up nice."
The adults all laughed, and a hurt look crossed Jack's face.
"That's not the right phrase."
"It's perfect, honey." Kaitlyn kissed the top of his head, thankful not only for him, but his ability to soften the emotional moment.
"Okay, good. Do you see how careful I'm being with the pillow? I haven't dropped the ring yet."
Kaitlyn bit her lip to keep from laughing. He was so sincere that she didn't have the heart to tell him the ring was tied onto the pillow. "That's wonderful, Jack. You are doing a great job." She looked to her father, who was sniffing discreetly and dabbing at his eyes. "Dad, it's going to be fine. You did this once before, remember?"
"Yeah, but I never liked that guy."
He chuckled before sobering up and sniffing one more time.
"I'm just thinking about how much like your mother you look, and how much she would have loved seeing you marry Dillon."
"Thanks, Dad." Before Kaitlyn could become a weeping mess again, the music started. Grant turned to the group, hand on the door handle.
"Well, here we go. Everyone ready?"
Slight nods and smiles circled the group, and Dan and Margie linked arms. Grant opened the door for them, and they proceeded down the aisle. Jack went next, walking at the slowest pace Kaitlyn had ever seen, still terrified to drop the ring. A titter of laughter trickled through the crowd. Grant and Melody linked arms and followed Jack. Then the music changed, and with a deep breath, Kaitlyn slipped her arm in her father's and began her walk up the aisle. Dillon's eyes were drawn to Kaitlyn from the moment he saw the back doors of the lodge open. Like an angel on earth, she was a vision of white. Her pale skin was just a few shades darker than her dress, which made her dark hair stand out even more. He loved that dark hair. It generally cascaded to her shoulders like ripples of chocolate, but today it was pulled atop her head. Tiny tendrils that he longed to touch framed her face. She found his eyes as the music changed, and she began her walk up the aisle. Though he was sure the audience stood, the surrounding people and noise seemed to fade away. It was just the music and Kaitlyn. 10 years. He still kicked himself that he had wasted 10 years of not being with her. But it was God's timing, and he was determined not to waste another moment. Since they'd been reunited, they had rarely spent an evening apart, other than the week he'd had to return to Florida to take care of his house there. He would either come to her house, or she and Jack would come to his apartment for dinner and devotions. On the weekends, they would drive to Keystone and spend the days with Margie and Dan, who seemed to be at the lodge just as often. She didn't know it, but he had planned a magical trip to Hawaii for them for their honeymoon. Kaitlyn stepped onto the podium under the gazebo they'd had built, handed her bouquet to Melody, and took Dillon's hands.
"You are a vision,"
he whispered. "You're not so bad yourself," she mouthed back.
"Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join these two in holy matrimony," the pastor began. "Kaitlyn and Dillon have been friends for more than a decade. Some of you went to school with them. Others watched them grow up. Some of you may have even been around during their first breakup. However, God has a plan for these two, and He has brought them together with a bond even stronger than the first time. Just as a bone is often stronger after it is broken, so sometimes is love, because now it has been tested by the flame. Kaitlyn and Dillon have survived that flame, and they have chosen to write their own vows today. Dillon?
Dillon took a deep breath and focused on Kaitlyn's eyes. They were his strength, his sense of calm.
Kaitlyn Bell, from the moment you stepped into my life, you changed me. You made me want to be a better person. For a time, I forgot that, and I found myself not liking who I had become. But you gave me a second chance and showed me that love is worth waiting for. The day you agreed to marry me was the happiest day of my life, until now, and I can't wait to start the rest of my life with you and Jack by my side.
Then it was Kaitlyn's turn. Dillon Fields, I'm pretty sure I loved you from the moment I met you. You were my rock after I lost my mother, and you accepted all of me with open arms. When you left, it turned my world upside down, and I walked some hard paths. I had almost given up on love until you came back into my life. You showed me that love can be renewed, and that the best things do come to those who wait. I'm glad we don't have to wait any longer, though. Another small chorus of chuckles scattered through the audience before the pastor spoke again.
Jack, do you have the ring?
Do I?
Jack asked loudly.
I've been so careful.
Will you please hand the ring to Dillon?
Jack took a step toward Dillon, but as his eyes were so focused on the pillow, he missed the step up and stumbled to the floor, sending the ring flying.
No!
The pillow landed in front of the pastor, the ring still attached. Jack's eyes grew large.
You mean it was fastened the whole time?
This time the laughter was louder, and Dillon bit his lip to keep from joining in. Kaitlyn's shoulders shook with silent laughter. Mustering as much dignity as he could, Jack stood, retrieved the pillow, and handed it to Dillon.
Thank you, sir,
Dillon said, as he pulled the tiny string and freed the ring. Jack shook his head one more time before returning to Grant's side.
Please repeat after me. I, Dillon, take thee, Kaitlyn, to be my wife. I promise to love you and only you for the rest of my life, forsaking all others. This ring is a symbol of our united love, and with it, I thee wed.
Dillon repeated the words and slid the ring on Kaitlyn's finger. Then it was her turn. I, Kaitlyn, take thee, Dillon, to be my husband. I promise to love you and only you for the rest of my life, forsaking all others. This ring is a symbol of our united love, and with it, I thee wed. She slid his band on, and they joined hands once more.
If there is anyone here who has just cause why these two should not be married, let them speak now or forever hold their peace.
Though Dillon expected no objection, he was relieved when the crowd remained silent.
Then by the power vested to me by God and the great state of Colorado, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride.
Dillon pulled Kaitlyn to him, and though he had kissed her many times before, it felt different kissing her as his wife. He wanted the kiss to last forever, but the sound of applause broke the moment and he pulled back, smiling at the woman he loved. It might have taken 10 years, but he had finally returned home. He knew no matter what the future brought, he and Kaitlyn would find a way to weather it together, and he couldn't wait to grow their family. The end. If you loved this book, please leave a review. It really does help others find books they'll enjoy too.